The auction house smelled of smoke, sweat, and fear. Bright lights shone down on the stage, where aliens of all kinds gathered to sell and buy the helpless. Metal cages lined the walls. Inside them, beings from across the galaxy sat with blank faces. The air was heavy with cruel laughter and cold business. A tall alien auctioneer stood in the center, his voice loud and sharp. "Next one? Bring her out." Guards dragged a small figure onto the platform. She stumbled. Chains clinked around her wrists and ankles. Her skin was pale, her body thin like she hadn't eaten in days. Long, tangled hair fell over her face. Her eyes, large and violet, looked down at the floor, afraid to meet anyone's gaze. The crowd went quiet. "Female, young, unbonded," the auctioneer announced. "Species, unknown. No known powers. Might be useful for labor or other purposes." The silence continued. One alien whispered, "She looks sick." Another laughed, "She won't last a week." "Too weak," someone called out. "Skip her." The auctioneer tried again. A starting bid, 10 credits. "Anyone?" No one moved. 5 credits. "Anyone? Come on." She's still breathing. Still nothing. The girl's shoulders shook. She didn't cry. She had cried too much already. Her ribs showed under the thin cloth they had given her. She closed her eyes and waited for the worst. Maybe they'd throw her back in the cage. Maybe sell her to the black market. Maybe worse. "All right," the auctioneer growled. "Last chance. Anyone wants her, speak now." That's when it happened. A hand rose from the back of the room. It was a human hand. The crowd turned. A man stood there quiet, calm, and strange. Not rich looking. Not dangerous looking. Just different. His dark jacket had dust from travel. His face was calm, but his eyes, they burned with something powerful. Not desire. Not greed. Just purpose. The auctioneer blinked. "You, human. Your bidding." The man nodded once. "I'll take her." The crowd laughed. "Why would a human want her? She's garbage. She'll slow you down." The man ignored them. He walked to the platform and placed a single coin in the auctioneer's hand. 1 credit. "She's not even worth that," the auctioneer muttered. "She is now," the human said. The girl dared to look up, just for a second. Her eyes met his. For the first time, someone wasn't looking through her. He was looking at her. The man knelt down. "Can you walk?" She nodded slowly. He stood and reached out his hand. Her hands were dirty. Her body was cold. She didn't move. He waited. Silent, patient. Then slowly, she lifted her hand and placed it in his. The chain clinked. He gently broke the lock open with a small tool. The guards didn't stop him. No one cared. She had been unwanted. But now, someone wanted her. As they walked out of the auction house, the girl glanced back. The other cages. The shouting crowd. The cold lights. She didn't know the man's name. She didn't know where they were going. But she knew one thing. She was no longer alone. The girl sat in the back of the transport, silent like a shadow. Her thin fingers clutched the blanket the human had wrapped around her. The warmth felt strange. Too kind, too soft. It scared her more than the cold. She was used to cold. The human didn't speak much during the ride. His eyes stayed on the road, his mind somewhere else. But every now and then, he'd glance at her in the mirror. Not with suspicion, not with anger, but with care. That, too, was unfamiliar. When they finally arrived, she expected another cage. Instead, the door slid open to reveal a small shelter nestled in the rocks of a desert moon. Not fancy, not big, but clean, quiet, safe. He stepped out and opened her door. She didn't move. "It's okay," he said softly. "You can come in." No one will hurt you here." Still, she didn't move. Then he bent down and said something no one had ever asked her. "What's your name?" She blinked. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Her name. No one had asked that in years, maybe ever. The auction house had only called her Subject 83F. She had no memory of anything else. I don't have one," she whispered. "The human?" Nodded. "Then let's change that." He walked inside. Moments later, he returned with a mug of warm liquid. "Drink this. I'll think of something." She hesitated, but the scent was sweet. Her hunger pulled her forward. She took it with both hands. He sat across from her, watching but not pressuring. Waiting, then he smiled gently. "How about Leary?" he asked. "It means free one in an old Earth tongue." She looked up .lir. She repeated it under her breath, slowly, like testing a new identity. "I like it," she whispered. "Then it's yours," he said. He didn't ask what planet she was from. He didn't ask what they had done to her. He didn't even touch her. He just gave her a name, a place to sleep, and silence, gentle silence. Not the kind filled with fear. That night, Leary lay on a real bed for the first time. She stared at the ceiling. Her fingers touched the soft sheets. Her eyes stayed open. Freedom was strange. It had no chains, yet still scared her in the next room. The human fixed some gear, repaired a drone, cooked something that smelled like real food. She watched him from the doorway. "Why did you choose me?" she asked softly. He didn't look up, because no one else did. Leary said nothing. That answer was enough for now. Leary sat in the corner of the human's home, legs folded under her, quiet as stone. Her eyes followed the patterns of the dust floating in sunlight. Her body had begun to heal. Scratches faded. Bruises lightened. But inside her mind, the chains still clung tight. Each sound made her flinch. Each shadow made her heart race. The human, whose name she now knew was Jonas, gave her space. He spoke gently, never forced, never touched. He treated her like something fragile, but not broken. That confused her. Monsters didn't get kindness. And yet, every day, Jonas greeted her like she mattered. "Morning, Leary. Made something for you. Sit if you'd like, or not." He never asked about her past, but her past came anyway at night. She screamed in her sleep, woke up gasping, covered in sweat. Eyes wild, Jonas never stormed in. He knocked, quietly. "Waited? You okay?" he'd ask. She'd lie. Yes, but the trembling in her voice always gave her away. One morning, Jonas placed something on the table. It wasn't food. It wasn't clothing. It was a mirror. Leary stared at it like it might bite her. She hadn't seen her own face in cycles. She stepped closer, slowly. Her fingers trembled as they touched the edge. In the reflection, she saw someone she didn't know. A girl with sunken cheeks, tired eyes, faint marks on her neck from the auction collar. Was that really her? She backed away. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For what?" Jonas asked from the side. "For looking like that, for not being better." Jonas stood, walked over and gently turned the mirror around, hiding her reflection. "You were treated like an object," he said. "But that's not what you are. What they did doesn't decide who you become." Leary stared at him. His voice held no pity, only truth. He didn't see her as weak. He saw her as healing. Later that day, Jonas took her outside. The air was warm. The sky had twin suns. Redbirds chirped in the rocky trees. Leary took cautious steps forward. She looked up for the first time in a long while. Jonas handed her something, a small metal stick. "What is it?" she asked. "A tool," he replied. "For building, or defending, or learning. Your choice." she held it tightly. For a moment, it felt like a weapon. But then maybe it felt like hope. "Why are you helping me?" she asked again. Jonas looked up at the sky and said, "Because once, someone helped me when I was lost too. I never forgot what it felt like to be seen." Leary didn't reply. Not with words, but for the first time, she smiled. A tiny smile. Fragile as starlight. And Jonas saw it. He didn't say anything. But deep inside, he knew her wounds were healing. Not the ones on her skin, the ones no scanner could find. Leary held the tool in her hand every day. At first, she just stared at it, turned it in her fingers, felt its weight. She didn't know what to do with it, but she didn't let go. Jonas never pushed her. Instead, he worked outside the small shelter fixing old machines, clearing debris, teaching the soil to grow again. He left the door open, always, as if saying, "You're free to leave, or join me." One morning, Leary stepped outside. Her bare feet touched the sand. The twin suns were just rising. Her shadow stretched long behind her. Jonas stood by a broken solar drone, struggling with its bent wing. She walked over. "I want to help." Jonas looked at her, surprised, but he didn't ask why. He just handed her a tool. "Loosen that bolt," he said gently. Her fingers shook at first, but they obeyed. The next day, she helped again. Then again, by the 5th day, she was covered in dust, grease on her hands, and smiling. A real smile, not forced, not fake. The desert wind tangled her hair, but she didn't care. Her body began to change. Food filled her bones. Muscles returned to her arms. Her steps grew stronger, her voice less afraid. She lifted crates, fixed cables, even outran a malfunctioning loader one day and laughed when she tripped into the dirt. She wasn't weak. She had never been weak. She had only been starved of food, of rest, of freedom, of worth, and now her strength was waking up. One afternoon, Jonas found her standing in front of the mirror again. This time, she didn't flinch. She looked directly at herself. Her eyes still held sadness, but also fire. She asked, "Do you still see the same scared girl?" Jonas shook his head. "No, I see someone learning to become herself." Later that week, Jonas left a datapad open on the table. Leary peeked it. Showed bounty listings, slave ships, auction locations. "Are you hunting them?" she asked. Jonas looked at her for a moment. "Trying to," he said. "There are still many out there, like you were, still waiting for someone to see them." Leary stepped forward. "Teach me." Jonas raised an eyebrow. "You want to fight?" "No," she said. "I want to free." Jonas stared at her, and in that moment, he didn't see a slave. He didn't see a victim. He saw a partner. And maybe, just maybe, the galaxy would, too. Leary was learning to live. Each morning, she trained with Jonas, lifting, running, aiming. Her hands, once too weak to hold a spoon, now handled tools and scanners with steady skill. Her voice, once a whisper, could now speak clearly, even laugh. But her past didn't vanish. It waited like a shadow. And one day, it returned. It began. With a knock, Jonas rarely had visitors. Their home was far from any trade routes. Quiet, forgotten. But the knock was real, firm, confident, loud. Jonas opened the door slowly. His body tense. Outside stood an alien in dark robes, skin gray, with pale spots, eyes cold. His face was burned into Leary's memory. It was the buyer who once tried to bid for her. The one who said she was barely worth breeding. The one who cursed and laughed when she went unsold. Now he stood outside her new home, smiling. The alien sneered. "So, she's alive. I've come to collect my property." Leary froze where she stood inside. Her breath caught property, That word pierced through time and pulled her back to the cage. Jonas stepped outside and closed the door behind him. "Calm. You've made a mistake coming here," he said. The alien chuckled. "According to this, he waved a data slate. She was registered for auction. No full purchase logged. She's legally unclaimed. If you're hiding her, human, that's theft." Jonas stared at him without blinking. "She's not property," he said flatly, "and she's not going anywhere with you." "I could report you to the Galactic Enforcers," the alien hissed. "You could," Jonas said, "but you won't." "And? Why not?" "Because if you do, they'll ask why you were buying slaves at an illegal auction on a banned moon." Silence. The alien's smile faded. "You've done your homework," he growled. Jonas didn't reply. His hand rested near the weapon holstered at his side. But he didn't reach for it. The alien's eyes narrowed. Then he laughed. "She's not worth the trouble anyway," he muttered. "Too damaged." He turned and walked away. When Jonas came back inside, Leary stood like a statue, her face pale. "You knew he might come?" she asked. "Yes," Jonas said. "Someday. They don't forget lost credits." "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to give your past more power." Leary looked at the door, still shaking slightly. Then something rose in her. Something new. Not fear, anger. "I want to train harder," she said. Jonas raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because if he ever comes back, I want to be the one to make him leave." Her hands clenched. The girl who once feared her own reflection was ready to face her past. Days passed. Then weeks. The alien visitor never returned, but his shadow remained in Leary's mind. Not as fear anymore, but as fuel. She trained every sunrise. Jonas taught her how to aim, strike, dodge. But more than that, he taught her how to stand tall. "Don't look down when you walk," he said once. "You're not prey anymore." She listened. Her back grew straighter, her steps more sure. The desert winds no longer pushed her around. They danced with her now. At night, she would sit by the fire, across from Jonas. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they said nothing. But the silence was warm, not empty. One evening, Leary handed him a bowl of stew she made. It wasn't perfect, slightly too salty, but Jonas smiled anyway. "You're improving," he said, finishing every bite. She smiled. Cooking, fighting, thinking, feeling. All these things were new, scary, but she embraced them. One night, she woke from a dream, tears in her eyes. She stepped into the main room and found Jonas fixing a broken drone. As always. "You don't sleep much," she said softly. He looked up. "Neither do you." She hesitated, then sat beside him on the floor. "Do you ever think," she whispered, "that maybe I wasn't meant to survive?" Jonas stopped working. He set the tools down and looked at her, not with pity, with quiet fire. "You didn't survive by accident, Leary. You survived because you were strong enough to." She looked at him, truly looked, and something passed between them. Not words, not even glances, but something deep. Something only people who had been broken understood. She asked quietly, "Do humans ever bond?" Without speaking, Jonas tilted his head. "We do, but it has to mean something." "What if it already does?" He didn't answer, but his hand reached out, slowly, carefully, and she placed hers on top of it. It was not a confession. It was not romance. It was something rarer. Trust, the kind that doesn't need a name. The next day, a group of traveling traders passed through. One of them was an old alien woman who sold handmade scarves. When she saw Leary, her eyes widened. "You're the girl from the auction," the old woman whispered. "The broken one." Leary stood tall. "Not anymore." The woman smiled. "You wear your soul differently now." As the traders left, the woman pressed a small cloth bundle into Leary's hands. "For the future," she said, and disappeared. Inside was a set of hand-stitched robes, delicate, beautiful, royal-looking. Leary looked at Jonas. "Why would she give me this?" "Because," he said, "you no longer look like someone who needs saving." The stars above were quiet, but Leary's heart was not. She stood on the edge of a cliff, her new robes flowing like fire in the wind. Beside her stood Jonas, checking the coordinates again. His face was calm, but his eyes carried the same fire. Hers did. They had found it. The old auction house, the place where she was caged, where laughter had followed pain, where she had once been called worthless. Now she would return. Not in chains, but with purpose. They had prepared for weeks, traced the black market routes, studied guard patterns, contacted silent allies, others who had escaped but never healed. Leary spoke to them, and they followed her. Not because she was loud, but because her silence had power now. As they descended the canyon path, she saw the cages again. The metal still looked the same, but it no longer owned her. One guard spotted them and raised a weapon. Jonas shot first. A warning blast. The man dropped his weapon and ran. They entered the building like ghosts returning to haunt the living. Slavers shouted. Alarms rang. But none of it mattered, because Leary walked forward. Unafraid, she opened every cage, one by one. The beings inside looked at her with wide eyes. Many of them were young. Some didn't even speak her language, but her actions spoke, louder than words. "You're free," she said again and again. Some cried, some collapsed, some simply stared. But freedom is always understood. Jonas placed charges along the main supports. The fire would come soon, in the last room. Leary found it the very stage where she had once stood, trembling. As no one bid, she climbed onto it, faced the emptiness, closed her eyes, and breathed. The memory still lived in the walls. The fear, the shame, the silence. But now there was something stronger her. She stepped down, looked back one last time, and nodded to Jonas. He pressed the trigger. From the cliffs above, fire bloomed. The auction house cracked, groaned, and fell into itself. The cages, the lights, the chains all gone. The past was no longer a wound. It was ashes. Later, they sat by their ship, the freed ones sleeping nearby under blankets and stars. Jonas offered her a drink. "You did it." Leary smiled. "No, we did it." She looked at the children sleeping near the fire. "Do you think they'll be okay?" she asked. He nodded. "They have you now. They changes everything." Leary turned to the sky. Her reflection danced in the ship's glass. She no longer looked like a slave. She looked like a leader. Maybe even more. Jonas leaned back, arms crossed. "So, what now?" She grinned. "We build something better." And with that, the girl no one wanted became the reason many would survive.